welcome. You so excited?
I'm so excited.
All right. Let's get right into it. This is the first time that I have prepared questions. Well, that's not totally true. I usually pick out like 2 or 3 questions I want to ask, and then I just keep them in my head. But I've done my due diligence this time.
Oh, I feel like that's not fair. Like,
I've
got
written
to
them down.
prepare everything, and I have no idea what you're going to ask me.
Yeah.
What if it's not a good answer?
We're going to start out with an easy, light question.
Okay.
Which is, as a woman, this is your first woman on the podcast, have you ever experienced a glass ceiling in your life?
Oh, okay. A glass ceiling.
And do you need me to elaborate on that phenomenon? You're familiar with that whole concept and all that good stuff.
Yes, I am familiar with that concept, but I am curious to kind of understand what context you're asking me in exactly.
Well, I don't know. I think there's probably context that I wouldn't expect treatment to be different in because I don't know that life. You know, I'm constantly surprised by the stories that women tell about like what has happened to them in life. It's just not something I would even anticipate would be a problem. So I don't know. The basic ones are workplace, career advancement. That's it. That's like the stereotypical, you know.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let me think about that for a second. I'm sure there are. I've definitely experienced frustrations in trying to, because I'm very competitive. So when I was going for my master's degree, I felt like there were a lot of opportunities that I would have been really great at. But like I never even got an interview for the jobs. And I don't know if that's because I'm a woman or because of my experience or any of those things.
You didn't get an interview at jobs?
Well,
like after you finished your master's?
Right.
Okay.
So it was kind of like when I was studying, I was like, you know, top of my class. I had all these great awards and I had, you know, awesome grades and all these other things. But it was like as soon as I like tried to kind of go into the real world per se, it was extremely difficult to even get an interview. Like I'd say it took about 3 years before I got to do anything in my field, like even remotely close to what I studied. Which, you know, being married to Drew, before he graduated, he had like 3 different opportunities like ready for him to just like jump into his industry. And I was like, that seems weird, but very different industries too. So, you know, there could have been other factors.
How did he get his job? Did he get his job from like military connections or no, completely separate?
No, because he actually had an internship before he went into the military. So, or no, I guess I'm not really sure exactly that timeline. I'm gonna take that back. So I was going to Goldie Beacom at the time. We were dating, and he wanted to get a job that wasn't like tradesman like. He was working for Dish at the time. And so I invited him to come to my career fair at my school. We both went. And we both ended up being hired by Wisfis Bank.
Yeah, from the same career fair.
From the same career fair.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because he was in IT, had not graduated yet with his bachelor's degree. I was working on my master's. I had my bachelor's degree. And he like was able to start on the help desk and kind of earn his way up. But he got hired into positions he wasn't technically qualified for, and they trained him on like how to do well in those roles.
Well, who isn't qualified for a help desk? They put anyone.
Well, no, outside of help desk. So he got promoted to desk side from help desk, where he would like go.
Like, after he got the job.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So, but like there were requirements on the actual posting that he didn't meet. And they hired him anyway with the understanding that he was willing to learn, which is great. And you should do that. But in my role, I was told
the same experience.
I didn't have the right experience, and that in a year, if I had done these things that they outlined for me, they would have a position for me.
In a year?
In a year. And I did it. And then the year came. I did everything they told me to do.
Really?
Yes. And then I applied for the posting and they told me they went with someone else and I wasn't able to get the job.
Wow.
And it was like the one I wanted in HR because I had been working in sales. And so I had gone out to lunch with, the director of the department, and they outlined, this is really great. You're on track. This is really good. And then, a year later, they're like, yeah, no, we're not going to do that. And my manager at the time was so, he would just tell you everything you wanted to hear, like you were progressing and as if you were growing, and then wouldn't actually do anything. So like, it was almost manipulative in the sense that like he played with my emotions to be like, no, like you're doing everything right and you're going to grow, you're going to advance. But it was like, he just kept everybody at bay, just told them everything they wanted to hear.
Yeah.
Mainly
keep
the
them
women.
on the hook, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I decided to just leave. I ended up getting the job at UD instead.
Nice. But you worked at Cash Connect, which is not the same thing as WisFis.
Right. So that's their ATM subsidiary. It is WisFis, but they were.
That was in sales and you're trying to move to HR.
Yeah.
And I see. Got it.
Yeah. Yeah. They're all connected. I guess Cash Connect was its own entity and then they got like absorbed into WisFis. So.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of drama there.
I see. So yeah, you had a sense that this boss would, he tried to keep people on the hook, make them believe that there was
hope.
Promise, there was hope for them.
Yes.
And do you think and that probably affected women more. Do you think he was like, oh yeah, I can swindle women more easily? Or do you think that was just a negative behavior he displayed that happened to trap women more frequently than it would trap men?
I think that's probably more likely. I think that, so from my experience, I'm trying to be really careful about how I say this. So I feel as though, with women, especially, we don't compartmentalize. So everything's connected. Mm-hmm. So if we're working we're giving our all into this. Like, we're not just like, okay, from 9 to 5, like, this is what I'm doing. Here are my parameters, like this. We're like, we're all in.
I love that. I love separating things completely.
It doesn't really work that way.
Out.
Clocking out. So, goodbye. Yeah, no, it doesn't work that way. So I feel like more often than not, I think that we kind of get put into this box of like, they're going to make decisions based off their emotions rather than analytics or facts or charts. And so something that I ran into really often was that if I had a good idea about something, I had to bring so much more data to the table than anybody else who was male on my team in order to be validated. So if I was like, I am in this role and I see this constantly day in, day out, here's a solution. I know this will work. My experience wasn't enough, whereas for men it would have been. Yeah. But for me, it was like, okay, here's the data, here are the numbers, here's the charts, here's the reports, and I'd have to like make my case, and it would be so much more than what I would see other people on the team doing.
Someone else could just make a suggestion, and for whatever reason, the boss is like, I feel like that is a good idea. Yeah. Instead of having to convince them. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think,
And don't get me started on pay, because that is totally a thing. Yeah. For sure.
Break down pay and wages. What's the structure?
So it's weird how different. So I was in, an HR role. I could literally see compensation information, and like women just made so much less. And it was like, why? It doesn't make any sense. And you knew
all these people. You're like, I know she does a great job.
Yes.
I know he's fine.
And most of the time, the women were working way more hours because they don't shut off. And so they're like at home working and bringing all this stuff to the table. And like, they never stop. Everything's connected. And like, they don't make as much. And I don't know what that is. Like, I think women are almost trending towards like being more helpful in some ways. So it's like, instead of being like, yeah, I'm not going to do any more work until you pay me more, they're kind of like, oh, I can do that. Oh yeah, I can do that. I can do that. And we're so like ready to take on more and prove ourselves to earn it, instead of being like, I know my worth and you're not getting that until you pay me more.
Yeah. Yeah. You're more agreeable in general. And you're right. Also, I think there's like this innate desire to be helpful too.
It's like that nurturing thing, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Is that
experienced
it?
that a lot.
But so also there's the boss side,
Yeah.
or there's multiple levels of bosses, I guess. And what do you think is going on in their heads? Do they just not think about it? And then they're kind of too lazy, and so maybe they let the chips fall as they may. Men happen to be more disagreeable in the first place, and they actually like, give me more money. And like maybe a proactive boss would actually do like an annual salary review. And
Yeah. I mean, I think that I was really lucky in my specific scenario because my manager was really good. He looked out for his team all the time. I think he really fought for his team to be fairly compensated, and he would, make a case and like make a little bit of progress. But in the case of like the academic world, if you're not a faculty member, it's really hard to get funding for anything. So like, I know that when we were in recruiting, like we're trying to get people in, we're not even making like industry standards. So like you're getting paid less than you would be if you weren't in like a university, but the benefits are supposed to compensate for the lack of pay.
I hate benefits.
I know, it's really stupid.
Just give me money, man.
I know, like I just want to be paid for what I'm worth, actually. Thanks. Okay. Yeah. But yeah, I think it would be really helpful if managers were more proactive about analyzing and being like, okay, we have to even out the playing field here.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't
But
know.
I mean, as a boss, isn't your job maybe to just like get the cheapest labor possible? In a way, you're being a bad boss by paying people more than they're willing to be paid for.
Well, yes and no, because it's like there's a fine line that you have to walk there, because if you bring somebody in for a lot less than they're worth, they're going to get frustrated and they're going to leave. So as far as retention goes, you're really losing way more than you're gaining. But if you bring them in too high, they can't grow at the right rate. And again, they'll get frustrated because they feel like they're capped.
Yeah.
So you really have to be so careful about where that middle ground is, and then having them progress at a rate that is not too slow or too quick. So there's a lot.
And by progress, you just mean salary.
Well, like, yeah, salary or bonuses, like there's lots of ways you can compensate someone. And I think really it comes down to like making your employees feel valued and knowing their worth. So like, I think that, there are definitely some stereotypes that are very rampant still. I know that some areas are better than others, but it's definitely still a problem, like a glass ceiling in the workplace for women. Absolutely. Like
it's kind of like having children. You got to take care of your children according to like your parent them individually. I feel like bosses need to make their employees feel valued individually. Yeah. And that's another point. Most bosses seem to be men. I don't know any statistics on that, but I mean, if that changed, a lot of this would naturally shake out because the women would be in those positions of power and they would,
So what I've noticed, and this is not something I know for a fact, but just from my experience alone, women who are in power that I have met are trying to be men.
They're cold, stone cold bitches.
No. But
what do you mean they're trying to be men?
So the way that they act is like disconnected from their emotions. Like everything's very factual and logical. It's like they're changing their demeanor, and they're changing the way that they communicate, and they're changing how they operate so that they're more like a stereotypical man.
They're changing, like, their personality.
Yeah, like they're totally different outside of work.
Really?
Yeah. And I think that's crazy because I think men and women have very different strengths. And I feel like women are really strong, but in their own way. Just like a leader doesn't mean like you have to be super outgoing and charismatic to be a good leader. I think a lot of soft-spoken people are really good leaders because they're more analytical and can like take a step back and think through something a lot more clearly than somebody who is like that driven, motivated, like quick thinker, like just jumps on the first thing, So like,
absolutely.
I think a lot of people just have different styles, and I don't think that women should have to act like men in order to be successful.
Yeah. Why are they doing that? Just because they need to thrive in the current patriarchy thing. They're just like, well, that's what works right now.
Yeah, I think it's like people lead by example. And so if you're in that already and you're seeing like that's what success looks like and that's how they got there, it's really easy to adapt those behaviors. And I know I'm even like victim to that too. Like when I was working, I felt like I had to be really aggressive, and I had to be very direct and like almost blunt in order to get my point across.
Yeah.
And if I wasn't presenting it in that way, it was like it didn't really matter. People didn't really hear it. But it wasn't me, and
even
I
if you had your little slideshow with like, here's my
my numbers. Yeah.
Yeah. That is, I mean, and again, you're having this experience, and it's really hard to know why it's happening. Like, are people not listening to me because they don't like me, because I'm a woman? It's because their problem is my problem. Like,
It gets really convoluted.
Yeah, it's hard to know what the deal is. And I will never have your experience, and you'll never have mine.
Yeah.
I do think it would be fun. I feel like I've mentioned this before, of like, you should just essentially cross-dress for a day. Try to really
see what it's like.
Yeah, like see if I could really make myself look like a woman. Yeah. I don't know how you could pull it off, but let's say, and then just see how people treat you and see how it feels.
Yeah,
that would be a really interesting experiment.
Yeah, it is. And I mean, I think women all over the place have different experiences, right? Like some women would say that they love it because they can use like their womanly charm to get what they want and manipulate their way like to the top. So there's lots of things that people say and do. But I think like now being in a more feminist world, that's not really very popular. But some people still do that.
This is what I want to know. I want to get more honest opinions from like, hot girls and then just more average looking girl. Like, because I feel like their experience socially has got to be radically different. And I would love really honest answers from all of those groups of people.
Yeah.
Particularly that more attractive group of women that do, like, they know exactly how people respond to them, how men respond to them.
I want to know your screening process for this. Like, is it like subjective to what you think is like attractive, or is there like a pool of people?
It's obvious. It's obvious when someone is, they're pretty and charming and everyone likes them. It's like, we all know who those people are. Yeah. They're the top of the social hierarchy.
They get everything they want.
They get well, I don't know if they get everything they want, but it's just like, there's the social class system. But I don't think I don't get a lot of honest answers about what that experience is like, because it's, I think it would be viewed as bragging to acknowledge that is your experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like people don't really want to admit that.
Yeah, or like, no one wants to hear the pretty girl say like, yeah, everything comes so easily to me, and here are the implications for that.
I mean, whatever. I think a lot of it is really personality too, because I think even if somebody is really pretty, like if they don't have confidence to go with it, it's like it doesn't do anything for that person.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And I've seen people who like aren't that attractive, but they just own it and like have that same like like experience. So I feel like it really, I don't know, in my opinion, I feel like it always seems to be like the personality that wins it all over.
Yeah, you're right. I think that there's plenty of women who are totally just wasting that power that they have. Seriously, I mean, it's crazy how how men will ruin their whole lives, right? To like have an affair or something. Like it'll destroy their family and they've got children and their job is, and it's like sad. They threw all of that away just for one girl. Yeah. This random girl. It's like, why did you do that? The amount of power that women have over men is crazy. Yeah. It's crazy. So you're like, why is there a glass ceiling? No, well.
Full circle. I'm just kidding.
Well, there's like, it's wildly different sorts of power. Yeah. And but that's maybe not the sort of thing that we want to like encourage our daughters to do. It's like, here's what you got to do. It's like in Mad Men, like, what are your assets? Yes. I don't know if you're familiar with that show. Yeah. Yeah. Like that creepy. That's not what we want to do.
No. I think we're moving away from that, and I'm really happy about it.
We're trying to, I guess.
Yeah. Now men want to be women, so who knows?
Yeah.
Too far.
Shoot. Well, it wasn't one of my questions. No. that's I don't know if that's a fun topic to talk about. It's something that is interesting, but I don't have that many intelligent things to say, I think.
I just have speculation and opinion, so I don't know if you want any of that.
You've got Johnny the Walrus. I did watch the What Is a Woman documentary.
I never watched it, but I've heard it exploding.
You don't need to watch you just watch the interviews on YouTube. Yeah. Because the interviews are really good. And then the only new thing that's in the documentary is like a couple of cut scenes that are really cheesy. So it's like,
why it's not important. With
that? I think what is a woman?
Oh, you're asking me that question? Yeah. What is a woman? Okay.
I could give a argument from the other side. Okay. My best representation of like how sex and gender are separate, sort of.
Yeah, do that.
So I appreciate how, or my view of things is that biological sex, male and female, these are very distinct categories that have fueled reproduction and have shaped the characteristics of male and females for, I don't know how many, hundreds of millions of years, right?
Right.
And gender and expressions of gender and phenotypical characteristics, which just means like how your genes manifest themselves physically, right? Like a beard or whatever.
Genes.
That's all stems from the biological sex. Mm-hmm. And eventually, like on top of that, grows these gender roles, and stereotypes, let's say, like let's see. So like on average, men are going to be more aggressive than women, right? Excuse me. That's not true of all men, right? So everything is some standard distribution, right? So it's not 100%, but on average, there's that men are more aggressive. So maybe you could say that's a stereotype of men, blah, blah, blah. And maybe as a response, a culture will treat men a certain way because they're usually more aggressive. Let's say as a parent, you have a boy, you will teach him techniques to handle aggression much more. Like that'll be a focus of your parenting, let's say, if they're a boy. And that makes sense, even if not all boys are super aggressive, whatever. Right. And then there's layers even on top of that. Like, let's say you have these distinct groups, males and females, and you have things like boys like blue, girls like pink. more kind of silly things, or even makeup, right? Like men in Egypt used to wear makeup. Scratch myself there. Men used to wear dresses. So there's lots of just cultural things associated with men and males and females.
Yeah.
Which really they take a life of their own inside of the culture.
Yeah, they do.
And it really has nothing to do with the biological sex, but it still is focused on that group.
Kind of indicative of that gender.
Yeah, it's, well, I like to, like, imagine, you know, in the 1940s, there's some marketing campaign that was like, you know what, let's, I gotta take another drink. Let's market this product to boys and we're going to make it blue, right? And let's say it's wildly successful. And that's why, quote unquote, boys like blue.
Mm-hmm.
So they created a cultural association, a gender association out of thin air, just because men and women are distinct groups of people. But blue doesn't actually have anything to do with, you know, penises, right? Like there's no real benefit for boys liking blue.
That's true.
Anyways, that was a very long-winded answer, but
no, it was good.
I think, yeah, eventually gender relationships have a life of their own that are completely separate from sex itself.
Yeah.
And those things are, you know, like a cross-dresser is, you know, like the clothes and appearance, a lot of that stuff is just part of the culture. And so it's really not
associated with gender.
Yeah, it doesn't really have anything to do with sex in a meaningful way. So there's no point. It's like, sure, whatever. You're a man, wear a dress.
Yeah. It
has a life of its own.
No, I hear that. I think I agree with that. I feel like you know, intellectually that makes a lot of sense. I think there are really distinct differences between men and women. A lot of them being like more related to your soul than anything else. Like, I think a lot of my opinion and the way that I view it is really tied to my faith, right? Mm-hmm. So because I believe that God created men and women inside of a design, like we're meant to be complementary pieces to each other, and we're not all created the same. So there are going to be some women and some men that fit into these stereotypical roles that culture has created. Mm-hmm. But then they're going to be the flip also, where you might have a woman who is more aggressive and is with a man who is much more accommodating or like gentle. But that's in the sense of like how culture has even labeled those things, because even in that relationship, I still think that the male role is true to the male gender, and the female is still true to hers, because honestly, I think the way we define men and women culturally is just completely off.
What do you mean?
Well, I think women were designed to be like kind of this like steady peace or calm, to like, it's like a quiet strength in a way, where like
grace.
Yes, like grace, but like it's funny that I say that because I don't think I fit that really. Like I am definitely not calm, I am definitely not grace, but I do know that I sacrifice everything for my family. And Drew does the same, but they look totally different, right? Like the way that I sacrifice and the way that he sacrifices. Like his roles are more like provider, protector kind of things. And like mine are more like, you know, day to day, what am I sacrificing to make my family's life comfortable? What am I doing to make my family grow and learn? And like, it's all the little things, you know? Mm-hmm. So it's like, I'm creating this safe space for them to exist, right? Where like, it's almost like peace or home, like that feeling of being home is kind of like what I think women are really good at cultivating.
Making the nest.
Kind of. But like it's more emotional relations, like not so much like physical. And I feel like for men, even if they're not that stereotypical like strong protector man, like that grunt kind of guy, right? Like they're still like chasing after that same sense of like purpose, and they're still trying to meet that need of being somebody's like protector. So even if it's not like physically, it can be emotionally, where they're like looking out for their spouse's like heart, or like, what they're needing from them. You know what I mean? Like there's still that relationship. It's just not as tangible as what the stereotypes are saying. You know what I mean?
So you're saying they do fulfill the kind of gender roles, but maybe in a way that looks different.
Yeah. Like I think the way we're designed is the same. Like what God purposed in us as women and men are the same, but that looks different based on our personalities, our strengths, our abilities, our talents. And like they do just complement each other. Like men and women, we're going to be super different. And I think when you take that away, you're like taking away a really crucial piece of your identity in the way that it's supposed to be designed and the way it's supposed to work. And then you're going to be constantly looking for that thing you lost and always feel like this like listless, restless, like what's happening. And I think what we're seeing now is like people who are just lost and they think this is the answer, and like really they don't even know what it means to fulfill those roles that they were designed to fill.
So you're saying there's the purpose that God set out for men and women in general. Those are slightly different things.
Yeah.
They're not the same thing.
No.
But it's also, you're not confining it to stuff like personality type.
No.
Yeah. I mean, that's the really tricky thing, is like getting a really solid definition for definition, or pulling out the mere essence of what is that purpose of masculine and feminine, and how do they cooperate. I mean, from my perspective, what I thought made sense was just look at the averages. Like, okay, on average, men exhibit these characteristics. Maybe I just draw a line in the center and say that's masculinity.
Yeah.
I
mean, that's very analytical. It's a very good way to do that. Gather the data, find the curve.
But also, not 100% of males actually fit that.
Right.
It's just the average,
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I mean, it might just be one of those things where I'm right in my approach, and reality just is kind of gray in that way.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard to have a one size fits all answer, like, because we're not all the same. We are completely different, every single one of us, even outside of our genders, And I think people in general are just really complex. Yeah. And I don't think that I think you're created the way you are for a reason. So your gender was a design. It was on purpose. Like, you are meant to be male or female. And so when all this talk is like, changing the gender and like, I'm not actually this, I am this, I don't think that's something that we can really decide or figure out, because it's really part of the grander complexity of what makes your identity. And if you're confused, it's because you don't know your identity.
Do you know a lot? Have you read accounts of what gender dysphoria feels like?
Some. Yeah.
Isn't it pretty wild?
It's crazy.
It sounds terrible.
It does sound terrible. It sounds like a nightmare.
Yeah, it's like there's poison running in your veins or something like that. Like there's this deep discomfort.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, I mean, there's like a couple ways I could go. I mean, we could just say, all right, most males and females fall into the broad brush categories of masculine and feminine. But also there's people that fall outside of that. And, we just say, yeah, you're neither male nor female, or maybe, or something like that. Yeah. Like maybe that's it. But also we don't throw away those categories that work for most people and actually align with personality traits, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of like in the middle.
Yeah.
It's not,
yeah, it's hard for me to see this topic outside of like my faith. Like I don't, it's just not even disconnected for me. So like I would even go as far, and this is super unpopular and probably not great to say on anything that's recorded, but
good. I like it.
I feel like anything outside of that is just a spiritual attack, because I think ultimately like your soul is constantly being battled over, and your identity is such a huge piece of that. It's like the thing that's been attacked for ages, like it's ageless. That's like the one thing that nobody can take from you is your identity, right? So like as Christians, your identity is in Christ. And if there's anything at all that can crack that or break it away, then your identity is lost. Like it doesn't belong to Christ anymore.
Well, I think you're right. That's why it's such a touchy issue, because it has to do with your identity.
Right.
And there's that sense that if you can't shake this feeling that my identity is a sin, then whether that's like your sexuality,
right,
you can't shake it. It's like, I've wanted to not be gay for 10 years and I can't get rid of, like, am I just a monster? Because it's tied to your identity.
Right.
And that's what makes it such a sensitive
issue. It's super sensitive. Yeah. And it's not that like I judge anybody that is, because obviously like we're in a culture that doesn't view it that way, and like I'm not an expert. I don't know everything on this topic. I literally,
it's best if we just pretend like we are experts.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
Please proceed.
I'm sorry to everyone out there that I'm misrepresenting as the expert. No, but it is hard for me to see it objectively. Like I will say that it is difficult. I try to be understanding and empathetic and like understand the other viewpoint, but because it is so ingrained in my mind and my heart as like what I believe through Christ, like I can't fathom how that aligns outside of that.
Yeah.
It doesn't click.
Yeah. No, I think there's lots of people that have that exact same feeling, because that's your ontology. That's how you make sense of the world.
Yeah.
And it's not, at some point there's just those basic set of axioms or assumptions that people have, like, that defines your worldview, and you can't really go beneath that anymore. It's not like they'll have a new discovery that'll change your opinion. It's just no, that's.
But that doesn't mean that I'm like closed-minded either.
No,
like I would like to hear other people's perspectives, but like they're just interesting to me. Like it doesn't necessarily make sense. But I mean, that's their world. Like that's what they're going through, and that's their their whole perspective. So like I can't discount theirs, like they can't discount mine, But it is really hard for me to clarify that, because like what is a woman is definitely like, what God made to be a woman.
So what is your final answer?
My final answer of what is a woman.
And then we'll move on.
I think it is the feminine aspects of God's person is my answer. Like grace.
That's a very nice answer.
Yeah. It's supposed to be like peace, grace, love, beauty, and, you know, it is a strength and a fierceness, but it comes out of like loyalty and grounded to your faith and your family, if that makes sense.
Grounded faith and family. That's a great lead into our next question.
Okay.
I think it's fair to say that you care about family.
Just a little bit.
When thinking about your family and your legacy, what is it that you hope to have received from your parents? And what is it that you hope that your kids will receive from you? Whether that's, genetics, you pass that down, maybe your family culture, love, stories, traditions.
Yeah. How long do I have to answer this question?
Yeah, let's start. Well, you start wherever you want. But yeah, I want to know, what do you want to receive from your parents and what do you hope your kids receive from you? Those two
Okay.
things.
Well, I like that you asked me what are the things that I want to receive instead of what are the things I wish I didn't. Because I know that we all have things we wish we didn't have. And I know I'm going to give things I don't necessarily want to give to my kids. But I've been actually thinking about this a lot, especially because, Drew and I are pretty new parents. And I feel like from my parents, they're both extremely passionate about what they believe. And I do love that. They're committed. And they love their family fiercely, and they are loyal. They're willing to be courageous, even if they're the unpopular opinion in the room. Sometimes maybe they shouldn't be, but it's okay.
Why shouldn't they be? Ruffle some feathers.
It's good to know your audience. That's why this podcast scares me so much. Who is the audience? I don't know. So I think I'm really grateful for those things. Like, I don't care if, I'm liked or fitting in. I think when you grow up in that kind of environment, it's more about where you belong versus where you fit in, because you can be a chameleon anywhere, but that's not going to bring you joy or happiness or fulfillment. But belonging does. And when you are yourself and you're able to just be you, completely and fiercely and unapologetically, you're going to end up finding where you belong a lot quicker and wasting a lot less time. I hope that I can do that for my kids too, where in a world today where things are so beyond what anything I know, like it's definitely turning into something that I don't even really know how to navigate. I really hope that I can instill in them a sense of belonging and self-worth, where they're not afraid to be themselves and they're not afraid of the peer pressures that are out there trying to change who they are. And I think as long as they're kind and loving in the midst of that, then I would feel like I did my job.
Feel happy.
Job done.
Nice.
Success.
So let me say that back, see if I understand you correctly.
Yeah.
What you love that you've received from your parents is the capacity to be yourself unapologetically, because that helps you. It's that authentic expression of your identity, who you really are. That when you are capable of that, then you can actually belong in an authentic sense as well, right? Instead of just faking it.
Right.
And if you're faking it, then any sense of belonging is also going to be inauthentic.
Right.
Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. And you also want to pass that to your children, plus also kindness.
Yes. Kindness and lovingness. Yes. I think, yes, that's essentially what I'm saying. I just want to clarify that. So with belonging, right? I think it's really important that, like, you are true to who you are. I think loving others comes first. So if you're talking to somebody that is not really somewhere you belong, I'm not saying like be brazen and offend the crap out of them. I'm saying, like, without betraying your values and who you are, you can connect to and love them, like, in a healthy way. But so much of what I see is, like, people striving to, like, fit somewhere they don't actually belong and change everything about who they are to get some kind of validation or belonging. And then, you know, you have all kinds of mental health problems and loss of identity, and God can't really use you as much in the purposes that he intends if you are stuck in that place. So that's kind of why I would want them to be able to have that ability.
I like that answer.
Thanks.
It's good.
I don't know if it made a lot of sense. I feel like I'm rambling.
I think it made sense.
Thanks.
Next question. What does it mean to run from the devil? How do you know? Yeah. How do you know when you are kind of embracing a good or an evil, like, attitude or thought process or perspective? You know, what's the devil? How do you identify that so that you can push it away from you and run the opposite direction? How do you actually discern?
That's a good question. So this is something I'm learning. I think when you figure it out, there's always more that comes at you that you weren't aware of. So what I'm learning is that whatever product of evil is going to be destructive and bring pain and sorrow and anguish. And I think if it's good and if it's like not of the devil, it's going to bring life and joy and beauty. And it's not saying that, like, it's always going to be that black and white, because there's some things that are just in the middle where you have a circumstance or a tragedy obviously does not bring life.
Yeah.
But
you're judging things by their fruit.
Yes.
Yeah.
Kind of like, you know, I have gone through a lot of, I want to say, like, mental adversity lately, especially after having kids. I did go through, like, a bout of depression, and I really wasn't seeing things very clearly. My reality was pretty skewed. And there was just a moment where I was like, I'm choosing to focus on all of this stuff over here, and it is destroying my relationship with my husband. It's not bringing life to my kids. It's depressing me and dragging me into some sort of an abyss that I can't climb out of. And it's like, in that moment, I was like, I am under attack and I'm not fighting it. I'm just letting it happen. So in that moment, you know, I could quote unquote run from the devil, because I knew that that wasn't me. That wasn't what I wanted. And I didn't have to choose to stay there. But it's not saying that's easy. Like, it took a long time to figure out how to combat that and get back to where I wanted to be. And I'm still getting there. But I think day to day, it's been easier for me to identify, like, what thoughts are taking me down that road versus which ones are leading me away.
So that you had a realization that you were simply focusing on destructive thoughts.
It was more than that. Like, it was just like, I believed that I was just a victim of circumstance. And so in that moment of clarity, I was realizing that it's not the case. Like, it is a choice. It's just a hard one. And you have to really fight and run to get out of it. But until that moment, I was like, I can't do anything about this. It's just what's happening.
By it, what do you mean?
Like depression. And, like, you know, I felt like my hormones were keeping me in that place, and I didn't have control over that. So I can't do anything about this. But it's funny, the things that can affect your hormones when you choose the right things, like exercising and waking up earlier and eating the right things, and, you know, diving into, you know, scripture or a good podcast.
Yeah. Well, I don't get the sense that you're typically a kind of a victim mentality person.
No, I'm not.
You know, I don't think that's something you think is like that you would want for yourself. So I can see that as soon as you realize or you feel like you're making yourself a victim when you shouldn't be, that you would be motivated to get out of that
Get the
as
hell out of
quickly
here.
as you can. Yeah.
Yeah. You're correct in that.
And so how long did you have certain death spiral? Like what was the thing that spiraled you into depression? Was it anxious thoughts? Was it like the whatever it's called, the hamster wheel sort of effect in your brain? That sort of thing? Or was it just like loss of motivation, like life sucks sort of thing?
So I've struggled with expectations my entire life. So that's a big one for me. And I'll elaborate, but it was a mix of that, coupled with, I'm trying to figure out the best word to describe what I was feeling, but it was like expectations that I had subconsciously made for myself and what I thought I would feel about the stage of life I was in, along with my own loss of identity. So becoming a mother, like, it's the weirdest experience and best experience ever because, you know, it's like you're doing something that is so fulfilling and life-giving and just undescribable. And it's amazing and wonderful and beautiful. And you're tied to this person that you love more than life itself.
Yeah. It's a massive identity shift, right?
It's a massive identity shift. So everything you've ever thought you liked or loved is different. And your relationships with the people you love are different. The way you view yourself is different. And you're pushed so far past your mental and physical capacities that you never thought you could do. So
just giving birth or just the whole time?
The whole time.
The whole time.
Yeah, like today I carried 2, 30-pound plus toddlers across an entire soccer field. I did not know I could do that.
Didn't know I could do that.
Yeah. So it's just, it's hard to describe, but growing up, I always thought that I was like going to live this great adventure. I had the unique experience of growing up, with my dad and my mom, right? They're people nobody else gets the privilege of growing up with except my siblings. And my dad just always treated me like I could do anything. Like, he always made me feel like I was the strongest. I was the most capable. I broke all the molds and different than anybody out there. Just like the most incredible person that walked the earth. And I didn't feel that way about, when I was with anyone, but I knew that he thought that about me.
Yeah.
And it gave me this confidence that even if everybody else around me hated me and thought I was crap, I was like, doesn't really matter because my dad thinks I'm great.
My daddy could beat your daddy.
Yeah, I don't know. So I was 16 and I could drive a boat and I could drive a sports car and I could fix my car by myself and I could,
That's cool.
Yeah, it was cool. I was really cool. And no, I'm just kidding. And at the same time, I liked music and I liked art and I was good at business stuff and math and science. And I was like, I could do whatever I want. It's going to be great. And I just decided, I was going to be this amazing bush pilot and I was going to go rescue missionaries. That was my dream, to land, in the jungle and on the water and in the woods and in these giant fields. And it was what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
So, I was in Civil Air Patrol and I'd got a scholarship to go to the school I wanted to in Florida. And one of the scholarships I got just for being a girl, which is great.
Inverse glass ceiling.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And then, Drew came along and all the plans changed. All of a sudden.
Drew is the glass ceiling.
Yeah.
He ruined
ruined everything. No. It was coupled with I just felt content. Like all of a sudden, like all the restlessness of like wanting to go out and live this like grand adventure, it was like I would rather go on an adventure with him. Like it was like this sense of peace. And then I found out that the school I really wanted to go to, even with the scholarships, was completely unaffordable. Like I couldn't go. And so I settled and did other things. And I don't regret it. Like I went to business school, and that's helping me a lot right now because I'm running my own business from home. But all that to say that like, it wasn't where I thought it was going to be, right? Like I thought I was going to be a mom eventually, but it happened really fast, like a lot younger than I anticipated.
What did you think it would be? Like 30?
Yeah. I thought it was going to be like later down the road. I didn't think I was going to even meet a guy until my junior year of college, and then not even get married until like way, way down the road. Mm-hmm. So when, Drew proposed to me before I even graduated school, I was like, what is this? What is
high
happening?
School?
No, college.
But, okay. All right.
Yeah. I was like, I wasn't even supposed to be dating yet. Like, this is not the plan.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, could we just this is great, but could we pause it?
Yeah. Just like pause
for 8 years. Is that a life? Yeah.
Yeah. And like, I was incredibly flirty. So like only ever being with, one guy, I was like, this is weird. This was not the plan. I didn't want that to happen that way, but I'm glad it happened that way. I think it saved me from a lot of things.
Yeah. You would have been whoring yourself around
at really bad
Bush pilot school, which
pilots.
Apparently has no women in it. They're begging women to come.
They're probably
I can't
nerds.
imagine how inflated your ego would be if you went to a school that there was like 3 women in it.
You're just like,
and everyone would be like, yo, yeah. You would be.
Well, let me tell you about Civil Air Patrol. It was very much like that. I was the only girl and among like 12 high school nerds.
They were nerds?
Oh, they were so nerds.
That's funny.
Yes.
The equivalent, well, I mean, first of all, my whole department of electrical engineering was like that. There was like 2 girls. And yeah, they were...
They were sought after.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's really funny. But yeah, so all of that to say, that was a really, really, really long answer, lots of information. But I think that I ended up in a depressive spiral because...
Yeah, those expectations.
Yes. It was like all of a sudden I was at home with a baby by myself.
Did it take a long time for the depression to set in once you're like, wait a second?
Yeah, it did.
It's just slow realization or something.
Yeah, because it was like, everything was ramping up. It was like, I'm ahead of plan. I'm ahead of schedule. It was like, I got married. I have a kid, and like everybody's excited for you, and you get all these presents, and everybody's coming around, and they are obsessed with your baby, and like everybody loves it, and it's so great, and you're getting all this attention, and like not even just attention, but like you just feel the love,
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, everybody's gone. And you're sitting there.
You realize you've done the one thing you can't undo.
What did I do? Yeah, you're like sitting there holding this baby that doesn't stop crying. You're like, I was supposed to be a pilot. I was supposed to be sought after by 700 guys. No, I was kidding.
What's that 1984? You're going to shake my ass in the hood of whatever car.
Yeah.
That's a great song.
That's a great song. I don't know that I'd go that far, but
it's the whole same vibe though.
Yes. So like, yeah, it was just like this was not what I expected. I don't know what I expected. Like, I don't really know, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing about being young. I mean, I think it's great that you had all the dreams. I think it's good. And also it's great for young people to have that overinflated sense of confidence, because that gives us the confidence to actually pursue something.
Right.
Even
like
when we're still bad at
it. Yeah.
Like, I'm so glad I thought I was good at singing when I was like 15, because if I knew how bad I was, I would have stopped.
Yeah.
So like that confidence, those dreams when you're young, it's
the best.
We need it.
You do. You
really
do need it.
But yeah, then you get depressed later.
Sometimes. If you do it right, you don't. But I did get depressed, so I did it wrong.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's another, maybe you could talk about how you manage this, of being a dreamer with high expectations versus being content.
Yeah.
You know, these seem to be opposites
They
sometimes. And I do resent, I hate when people talk about lowering your expectations as a solution to discontentment.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, you want something you don't have? Just stop. Just lower the bar,
Just
man.
don't
Like,
want it. Don't want it so much.
just don't want it. Yeah, and you'll be happy.
Yeah.
You know, just like,
Yeah.
that's a solution to you. Let's
Yeah.
just lower your expectations. It seems like the most cop-out response or the cop-out approach to life ever.
Yeah, it does.
don't know
I
if
hate that
you-
answer too.
Okay, so you're on the same page.
Oh yeah, I hate it. And when people tell me that, I'm like, yeah, there's better answers out there. Go, get out of here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so yeah, how did you deal with that? Did you feel like you were just lowering the bar for your life, or were
No.
you just, how did you
I think it's about
fix it?
pivoting.
You
Like,
pivot.
it's not about lowering your bar or not wanting those things. Like, you can still want those things. It's not bad to have dreams. And I think you should have dreams. Like, there should always be something you're striving for, looking ahead to. But when that becomes your obsession and you can't see the joy in the little moments in front of you, I think that's where you get lost. So like for me, I was so lost in what I didn't have and what I thought I would have that wasn't there. And like these grand expectations that, I should have arrived at or something, right? But like, because I was so obsessed about what wasn't there, I was missing what was right in front of me. So I think the key is about staying present and engaged to what's going on around you and finding joy in those moments too. Because if you're only concerned with arriving, you're going to miss the whole journey, which is cliche, but so true.
Yeah.
And, once I figured that out, I feel like it's been easier to be a stay-at-home mom and like find hilarious things in the middle of my kid's day. And like, really our day is super dynamic. Like, we cry and we laugh, we scream.
You're just on the journey with
all
your
of the
children.
Same day. Yeah, it's so
you're
great.
crying, I'm crying.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I like it.
Yeah.
And I agree. I think there's a bit of a paradox. Maybe it's not really a paradox, but yeah, there's those two things. Like, let me really appreciate the present moment.
Yeah.
And also try to make the future better.
Yeah. And you can be both. Like, it doesn't mean you have to pick one or the other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, nice job. Nice job pulling yourself out of that.
Thank you. Yeah.
It's hard.
Still a work in progress. Some days are better than others.
What does it mean to be truly happy?
Truly happy. Okay. So I was reading a book by Brene Brown.
Oh, yeah.
Really like this lady. She wrote this book called The Atlas of the Heart, or Atlas to the Heart. I have to remember which one it was. I found it really fascinating because she talks about human emotion, kind of where it belongs in your heart and what you start to feel in these different places of your mind, soul, heart, being, etc. And she talked about joy and happiness. My whole life, I thought joy was like that contented choice of, like choosing to be happy, sort of, where happiness was like that fleeting moment or that fleeting feeling of like, you can't really control it. Sometimes you're happy, sometimes you're not. But she says they're opposite, where joy is that like spark, that like feeling in that moment, something that makes you feel joy. And happiness is actually the choice. You can choose to be happy. And, it's that long-term emotion. And so that's really been like messing with me lately. I'm not really like sure I fully understand it yet. But to be truly happy, that was the question, right? Like, what is to be truly happy? I think to be truly happy, again, would have to be really being present in your life and what you're doing and choosing the things that bring you joy, the spark, and being intentional about chasing that. So like with your family, with your friends, with your relationships, with your job and your hobbies, like what is it that brings you that spark, that joy, and be intentional about building that into your life. Like what are your values? What are your priorities? How can you have more of that and less of the other things? And I think a lot of times people give boundaries a bad rap, but I think you can't have happiness without having a boundary to keep out things that don't bring you joy. And that doesn't mean don't do something that is hard or don't do something that isn't worthwhile, because sometimes sucky things are actually the right things. But I do think you can choose to put more joy in your life than you realize. You're in control of that a lot more than people think.
I see. So, and as you choose to include things that spark joy, you will find yourself happy.
Yeah.
Long term.
Because you've decided to put that in your life. It's not like, you just woke up and decided I'm going to be happy or I feel happy today. It's not something that just happens to you. It's something you're intentional about building. And then over a period of time, you've created a life and a space that is happy.
I see. So when you say long-term happiness is a choice, you're not just saying, sit there and think about like, I'm going to be happy today.
Yeah.
You mean it requires action.
It does.
In the sense that you have to know the things that bring you joy and then choose to do those things and structure your life to include them.
Yes.
And then you'll actually be happy.
Yes.
And your long-term happiness is the product of your choices.
That's a huge part of it. Yeah. I think like there is another piece to it where you can look at the things in front of you and choose to be happy about the good things or choose to be sad about the frustrating things. But there's always both, right? Like you always have both. It isn't like one day you only have happy things that happen to you. Like no matter what happens on a given day, there's usually both. So you get to pick which ones you want to focus on. Yeah.
I like that answer. I mean, I think there's also the way, like your brain just does calibrate to
negative.
Well, it's just whatever your situation is.
Yeah.
There'll be some good things and some bad things. And there's usually some problem. Imagine there's a long list of potential things that could be better about your life.
Yeah.
There's always a list of things that could be better.
Always.
And there's always going to be one item at the top of the queue.
The biggest problem. Yeah,
it's the biggest, relatively speaking, it's the biggest problem. Now, maybe it's a tiny problem, but it is the biggest problem at that point in time.
Right.
And so, I mean, and I feel like your brain isn't really structured to say, I'm good. It's always just going to, let's say that I've trained my brain to be have 40% of my mental space be dominated by the next problem on the queue. It doesn't matter how good my life gets, 40% of my brain is always going to be thinking about a problem, you know? And so, I could be in a concentration camp and my problems will represent 40% of my brain space. Or I could be, living up in America in a very blessed situation and still 40% of my brain space is occupied by,
problem solving.
Yeah. So it's, I feel like there is some calibration that you can do as well.
No, I totally agree with that. And I think, part of life is working towards a goal, right? And problem solving is seeing your surroundings and seeing what's in front of you, what could be better, how you can fix things. And I think that's a great way to look at life. I think you should do that. If not like your own personal space, home, relationships, but also like for other people, right? Like you see problems around you, like people who don't have enough to eat every day, or people who are living on the street, or people who need help. Like, how can you fix those things and how can you make their lives better, right? Like, there's always different avenues to take with that. And I think that, like, that is human nature. Like, and I think more than others, some people are fixers and problem solvers, and other people, you know, are kind of like showing that in different capacities. Like maybe they're more of like a supporter, like they don't necessarily want to solve the problem, but they want to help somebody else solve it or something like that. Right. So I think that's different than happiness, right? Like I think being present accounts for all of that, because you can be aware of your surroundings, and it's not like you're this like blinded optimist just going through life like, I don't see the bad things, like I'm only looking at these over here. I think that's not healthy. So don't do that. But
well, maybe it's not very productive.
No. So I think that like regardless of what you're seeing in your present surroundings, it's like you can work to fix problems, but then also like as far as your mental state goes or your heart posture, you can still choose to be happy in the midst of those things that you're choosing to see. Like,
yeah,
if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I mean, ultimately, I want to at least be conscious of like how much of my mental energy is being taken up by problem solving. Like sometimes, you know, maybe I'm at work and I need to dial that up and just say, like, yeah, I'm in problem solving mode.
Yeah.
But then later,
you have to dial it back down.
Yeah, just be like, you know, we're not trying to solve any problems right now. I'm just trying to look at this flower, right? Like,
I like that it was a flower.
I'm gonna appreciate this.
Yeah.
I like looking at plants.
Plants are cool. I like plants too.
Yeah. All right.
I like that that you put that in there. I think that's really important too. Like being aware of how much of your energy is being given to one thing at a time is like really important, because then you can know if there's a red flag, like you're being obsessed about something, or if it's like the healthy amount of effort going towards that issue. That's really good.
All right. This might be our last question.
Okay.
Let's see. Well, let's see.
Do I talk too much on this podcast?
No.
Okay, that's good. I talk a lot, so I was a little worried.
All right. I'm curious to see what your answer is here. Okay. So I read this quote. It was, I can't remember the author at the moment, but I wrote it down.
Okay.
So silence teaches love. It makes us able to receive love and to extend it, yet in our own authentic, proper way. This means that we will love differently than the world expects. We will surprise and often disappoint. So when you talked about being authentic, have you surprised or disappointed people when you felt like you were kind of extending some authentic form of love to them?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I think yes. This is a hard one for me. So what part of that do you really want me to elaborate on?
I'm curious. I mean, maybe you can abstract it so you don't have to tell a specific story, but like, why was there a mismatch in your authentic expression of love And, how is it different than what the person was expecting?
Yeah.
And why do you think that was?
Well, I think my whole life I've been trying to figure that out because I don't receive love like at all from anybody ever. I think somewhere along the lines I just didn't really know how. And there's like this deep part of me that never feels like I'm enough with anything. So like I don't really deserve love, if that makes sense. So I've sort of been in this like survival capacity for a really long time. Since having kids, it's changed a little bit. I've become more aware of it. It makes me cry a lot. But because I never really knew how to receive it, giving love was always a weird thing because it would always be too much or not enough for the right time or the right people. And depending on the relationship, like I just always seemed to kind of miss that mark. It was never like the right amount. So like with my parents, I always felt like, I was trying to express love to them all the time. And, like never really felt like it was enough, but then, with some friends, it would be like, that girl is so sweet and way overboard. Like that's way too much. She like showed up at my house and surprised me with my favorite candy and all these things. And like, we just met yesterday. I'm just kidding. But like,
yeah,
like it was just, it's different. And like, I think it really depends on how somebody receives love and if they've communicated to you what's important to them and how they receive love, because you can be doing so much and it's just not how they receive love and they don't even see it, and like that's true in a marriage too, right?
Yeah.
Like Drew and I have really different needs. Like for me, I just want somebody to like be there. Like I want somebody I can talk to that will like look at me when I need them to like give me attention and like affection, where like he just doesn't, like if my presence is in the house, that's enough for him. Like yeah,
You're
like you're upstairs somewhere, I can tell. I feel so loved. So like there are total times where like even with just him, I've totally gone over the mark and went way overboard and it was too much. And then other times where like I'm trying really hard and he was disappointed with my efforts. Because I just didn't know how he wanted to receive love. And I think it's something that we're still figuring it out because it changes, like depending on the situation and the time. And like, it's a lot to that. Like it's very complex. And I think that everybody has a natural way of showing like their love to someone.
Yeah.
But based on how they receive it, it could either fall to the wayside or be really extreme.
I think that you could write some of the most tragic stories of all time about two people who are trying to express love towards each other.
Yeah.
But there's some miscommunication.
Yeah.
Or something that causes it to just be a train wreck. And you just see these two people in their earnest hearts being like, I want to extend love to this other person. And I've never seen the movie Notebook, but isn't that kind of...
That kind of happens,
Isn't that like the the tragic part of the end or something?
Yeah. Was that quote from the Notebook?
No, it wasn't.
I'm just kidding.
Have you seen that movie?
I have. Yes.
Is it good?
It was good. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely a chick flick for sure. It's like as classic as classic gets, but it was good.
Yeah.
And there's all these like missed opportunities, it's like sad.
Oh yeah. I think that's one of the most tragic kinds of stories.
It is tragic. I think there's one that's more tragic, but it's pretty tragic.
Well, just like as a template. Well, what do you mean? What are you talking about?
I find like two people who really love each other, like are together. They have their whole like happy ending in a sense, right? Like they get to live out their lives together and then become like...
You're talking about Up from
No. But like as they go through life, just become like distant and like platonic.
Oh, yeah.
That scares me way more.
Really? That
Yeah.
doesn't seem tragic to me.
It does, because it's like these people who are meant to be together are soulmates, and they're meant to like conquer the world together, and they just like let it die.
Apathy or yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I would call that a shame. Like, that's a shame. It doesn't like make me sad though.
I don't know. I feel way more sad about that.
All right. Let me, well, I wonder, what do you have any thoughts about the first part of this? About silence? Because I mean, the whole chapter from this book it talks a lot about meditation and kind of retreating, being silent. So it says silence teaches love.
Yeah.
It makes us able to receive love and to extend it.
Yeah, I think.
Do you relate to that? Do you have silence in your life?
I do have silence in my life, to some extent.
Yeah.
I don't think I really did have silence before. I think I'm really prone to distraction and like filling my time and busyness. And before I had a family, it was always about like how much I could do, how much I could accomplish. And so I was always striving. I never stopped. I never took a breath, right? But then after having kids, like your priorities realign, and I quit my job, which is something I thought I would never do. Like I worked 3 jobs and took 5-hour night classes to get my master's degree so that I could be a career person. And then I just quit. And it was like silence filled my soul. Like I felt like my relationships were changed or fell away. And the people that I thought were my friends were only there because I happened to be standing there in their circle. And so like I learned a lot about myself, right? Like you learn all kinds of things when distractions aren't screaming in your ears and your face. Like, and love, I think, is so key to the human soul. Like you really feel it in its absence, right? So when you're silent and alone, nobody is doing things to you. You're not trying to give anything to anybody else. So like you can kind of really analyze and learn and familiarize yourself with like, what is love to you? How do you receive that when it's gone? Right?
Yeah.
What do you miss? How do you want it to come back into your life? And then like, how do you generally express it? And is it well received or not? You know? So yeah, I think that's really true.
Do you feel like, is that quote true? Do you think after that you learned how to receive and extend love better?
I'm learning. I don't know that I've got it, but I'm learning for sure. I think silence is really helpful for becoming self-aware. And then once you become self-aware, you're able to interact better with other people. But unless they also are self-aware, that can be a really hard, complex journey.
Yeah. You know, do you know John Batiste? He's that musician who does the Stephen Colbert show.
No, I don't think I know him.
A cover of What a Wonderful World came up on Spotify, and it's such a wonderful song.
Yeah.
Wonderful song.
Yeah, wonderful.
But I love the lyric, oh gosh, what is that? I see friends saying, how do you do? But what they're really saying is, I love you. It's like, so nice.
So good.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I want. I want every relationship and like the how do you do to really embody and just be packed full of the love. Like,
Yeah.
you know, have that really be received.
Yeah.
That would be ideal.
That would be awesome.
All right. This will be the last question.
Okay.
This is part of an incredible rant.
Okay.
From Tim Dillon. which is a comedian on YouTube that I enjoy. And he's talking about Shawn Mendes. Do you know Shawn Mendes?
Yeah.
He's a young, very attractive young man, wildly successful music career. But he was taking a break because he said it was like for mental health, essentially. Like he was at a breaking point.
Yeah.
His career. This is what Tim Dillon had to say.
Okay.
Look at him. You realize how empty life is like that. You realize how vapid and empty life is. All the things that most people struggle for in life, getting laid, having money, looking good, they are challenges that define people's lives. Losing 20 pounds is a challenge that defines people's entire life on earth.
Oh my gosh.
They spend their entire life trying to lose 30 pounds, to be a little less fat. That's the entire arc of their entire life. And Shawn Mendes is just rich. He's got $40 million. People spend their entire life trying to put $50,000 in a retirement account so they can get like a little barn thing. I don't know what he meant by that. He already, at 23 years old, has $40 million. He's already hot. He's already got the girl. He's already famous. There's not much left to do. There's nowhere to go. So that's why he's at a breaking point. What is the meaning of life?
Yeah, I know this answer.
What do you think about his take? People's, it's like the cynical way to say something that I think is really true.
Yeah.
Like it's a whole arc of like getting in shape.
Yeah.
Like I'm proud of myself for like working out a little bit. That's like a whole year of Nathan Walker's life.
Yeah. I worked out. I'm great.
That defined that year in a way.
Yeah.
And like that's just it's a funny, cynical way to say that.
Yeah. I thought that was
Do you think that's fair? Are we just spending our lives doing these small tasks, and then after we're done all of them, we realize it's all vapid and meaningless?
Yeah, I mean, again, like this goes right back to faith for me. Like immediately, it's like a visceral response. Like, duh. Yeah, there's no God in that. So no wonder, like no matter what you're working towards, whether it's fame, fortune, sex, or whatever, or losing 10 pounds, it's like, if it's not like your purpose, it's gonna feel crappy. Like I literally am so ingrained in this, like literally nothing I do on this earth, absolutely nothing, is gonna matter at all unless I know that I'm within like my purpose and my design for my life, if that makes sense. Like I have talent, skills, abilities, and purpose for a reason, right? Mm-hmm. And so like what I'm called to do is to be within those lines. And when I'm outside those lines, it's going to suck. I'm going to feel like I don't have a place or a purpose or a meaning. Mm-hmm. And like, if I lose 20 pounds while I'm within this calling, it's going to be great. And I'm going to love it. But if it's not, I'm going to be like, well, what's that for? What's the point? It's so vapid.
I mean, losing 20 pounds feels great. Like,
yeah, it does.
You feel good about yourself.
You do, but it's temporary. It's like, then you're like, okay, what next? Like, done with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I am the kind of person that is like always on to the next thing. Like it doesn't matter what I achieve. I don't even think about it once I have it. It's like, I just keep on going. So like, if I don't have like an overall purpose or an overall mission that doesn't end, it's like none of it matters.
Yeah.
But so that might just be me.
Yeah. You've in your faith, you have this goal that has an end point past when you're dead.
Yeah.
So you don't really have to worry about it expiring.
Yeah, it's
or
forever.
being completed. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah. Poor Shawn Mendes though. Like really sucks for him.
Poor Shawn Mendes.
Yeah, he got it all, and he's
fine.
like, my life's meaningless.
Well, he was just taking a mental health break.
Yeah,
He's
right.
like,
Just a break.
you know. Yeah. No, I think you're right. I think people maybe they all just need to go back to church.
Maybe. I mean, I think it's more than that. Like, it's about having that whole, like, willing to risk it all for the kingdom of God, right? Like, it's kind of exciting in a way.
Listen, you're not diving a small plane into a rainforest.
I am in my heart.
I don't want to hear it.
I'm on the worship team. That was almost the same experience for me.
It's the same.
Worse. It was scarier than diving a plane into a forest.
Did you fly planes a little bit? You were in a training program. Did you ever take one up?
So I had an O flight and I did a glider, but that's it. Most of it was like learning about planes and flight and aerodynamics and ranking, and it was like an Air Force auxiliary. So you had to do like drill where you would march and be in like a squad and, you know, all that stuff too. So it was like a lot of things.
Yeah. So a glider. That's a plane. It's like a plane.
It's attached to a plane until they unattach it, and then you have to land it without an engine.
Oh.
Yeah.
How was that scary?
A little bit, but I was like with a person, like doing it together. So it wasn't like I felt like it was all me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's okay.
It sounds pretty cool though.
That
I
is
actually, my grandpa, my mom's side, who actually just passed away a few days, he worked at like China Lake Air Force Base.
Okay.
In California. And I got this little book from him. Well, first I asked him some questions about like wing design, because he worked on like airplane design, and like he had some equations written out about like the force and the lift and the drag. And it's like, well, you know, and he could explain to me like why the wing was shaped that certain way, because that would let it take off like almost vertically. And so it was really fun. And it was fun because at that point he had Alzheimer's pretty bad, but when he was looking at his equations and his drawings, and it connects to that point in his memory that's still like highly coherent, you know? So he could still just like reach in and pull out this information about planes.
That's amazing.
So that was kind of fun to hear. And I stole just a little...
Like a book?
Book, yeah, about that.
That's amazing.
Planes are pretty amazing.
They are pretty amazing.
What made you interested in planes at first?
Just the flying, like being able to fly. And I just thought that was the greatest thing. Like wild and freeing and fun, and, you know, like you're above everyone and everything, and it's great. Not like in an arrogant sense, but like in a physical sense. like nothing else exists.
Down on people.
Just you in the sky.
Yeah. And what age did you really like?
I always liked planes.
Always.
Yeah.
Nice.
Like we grew up, down Old Point Road, and they had this little airport there called Raintree Airport. And so we'd always see like little Cessna planes like taking off and flying around, and it always just looked like it was the best. I always loved it. We'd always like get up to the part of the airport, and I'd be like praying that there was a plane taking off, because the runway went right over the road, so the plane would like go right over your car.
Nice.
It was like the coolest thing.
That is cool.
Yeah, I loved it.
Is there anything you're excited about right now?
Right now? Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things I'm excited about all the time. Right now is really focused around my photography business. I'm doing a lot of new things with that. I'm putting a CRM into place. So like working through different processes and workflows, and like designing all of my materials so that I look all profesh and amazing. And it's making me really excited. Just to have everything like organized and flowing, so that my clients get a really great experience, and I'm able to like meet more people and serve people better. That's really exciting.
You've been building material for that for 2 years?
Somewhat, yeah. So like I really didn't start diving in until this year.
Okay.
Because before then I was just kind of doing everything manually. And like, it was very personal in the sense that like,
You just text them and set
draft
it
it all
up.
in an email every time. Yeah. So this is just going to be a little bit more instantaneous so that my clients have what they need quicker and they don't have to rely on my children's sleep schedules to get it. So.
Very nice.
Yes.
And you have a website?
Oh, yeah.
Which is what?
Rebecca Ellie Photography. It's rellysphotos.com. So RELLY photos.com.
Relly Photos.
Rebecca Ellie.
Rebecca. Oh, I see.
Relly.
Rellyphotos.com. Very nice.
Yep.
Thanks. It was a lot of fun.
It was. Thanks for all of the questions. I hope I did okay.
Oh, yes. That was great.
Thanks for having
A lot
me.
of fun. Have a nice night. Bye, everyone.